All right, everyone, welcome back to Course of Action. Thanks for joining me tonight. My guest tonight is Tod Goldberg. Todd, how you doing?
I am doing fantastic. I've had a really good day. The UPS man just brought me a box of shortbread holiday cookies.
Hey, nice.
It was a gift from my audiobook reader. Let me tell you something. Get yourself into a position where people, unannounced, send you shortbread. That's when you know you've succeeded. Like, that's it. I don't need the money.
You've made it.
I don't need the fame. I just want some fucking cookies. Send me fucking cookies.
That is great. Where you're getting stuff
Yeah,
from
that's all I
other
need.
people, just appreciating you. Hey, here's some
Yeah.
cookies.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, if anyone out there wants to send some cupcakes or anything, send them. I'm not going to give out my address right now, but you send them to UC Riverside in my name. I'll get them. I'll get them. I'm like Santa over there. So if you say Tod Goldberg, UC Riverside, and it's a crap load of cupcakes, like there will come a day where I will have frosting. So don't you worry.
Well, thanks for joining me tonight, and congrats on the release of Only Way Out. It's a great book. I really loved it. It was entertaining, just like all your other books. This one had that cut of humor, that police procedural, that intrigue, that mystery, all the good stuff. It was a great book. I loved it so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I've been
Nice to
reading
hear.
more of those lately, trying to get more into those and away from the spy thrillers as much and kind of change it up a little bit. But this was a really
Right.
great book. I loved it. But what I want to ask is from the start, how do you sit down and start a new book idea and development?
It depends sort of what the project is. In this case, with this book, I had originally thought of it as a short story. And the nice folks at Thomas and Mercer, they do a series of short stories every year, based on a theme. And I don't remember what the theme was that they had approached me with, but I pitched a version of this story as a short story to them. And they said, "Oh, we love this idea. Write it as a novel." And I was like, "Oh, well, here's a champagne problem that I wasn't expecting. Like, this is even better, frankly, than the free cookies, is when someone says, 'Would you like a book deal?'" Yes. Yes, I do. So in this case, it really came from some information that I had discovered. And this is often sort of where my ideas come from. I see something and it inspires me. So the previous books, like the last 4 books I wrote about a hitman who hides out as a rabbi in Las Vegas, came to me because I was parked in front of a Native American cemetery here in Palm Springs where I live. And it's a cemetery that I had driven by, I don't know, 10,000 times in my life.
Yeah.
I saw someone walk out of it. And I was like, I've never seen anyone walk in or out of that cemetery. Like, who is that guy? And then I thought, if I really wanted to get away with killing someone, I would take them and I'd bury them in that cemetery where I've never seen anyone come in or out of. And then it was like, and I had this idea of laundering bodies to a Jewish cemetery that came to me all of a sudden because Jews don't embalm, and just a whole series of things. But like, that came to me very quickly after I saw this guy. Like, in 15 minutes, this idea was there. In the case of this book, I knew that I wanted it to be someone does a heist and they die getting away with the heist successfully in front of a person who also needs the money. I knew that. Like, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. But I didn't really know how I was going to do it. And I was at my sister's house. We had gone to a concert. We'd gone to see Jason Isbell in concert. And this is an important thing for your listeners out there. Go to concerts with your sisters. It's fun to see like the people that are now grandparents and just parents screaming like they're 12 years old again. It reminds you of your youth and it keeps you alive. But anyway, I was staying at my sister's house after going to this concert, and the next morning I woke up and my nephew, he was in law school at the time, and I was just making conversation and the coffee hadn't hit in yet. And I was like, "Anything weird about where you were, summer associate?" He's like, "No, it's pretty standard, old, like 110-year-old law firm. So a lot of blue collar stuff, a lot of white collar stuff, some criminal." And I'm like, not really paying attention. And I said, "Was there anything unusual at all?" And he's like, "Well, there's a floor of safe deposit boxes. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? He said, yeah, you're seeing this more and more in law firms because feds can get into safe deposit boxes at banks where they can get robbed. And then the private safe deposit boxes, the feds can get into those. There's a case that's going up before the Supreme Court. So a lot of people use their law firms as safe deposit boxes, but the stuff they put in there is covered by attorney-client privilege, so the feds can't get to it. And it was at that moment when I recognized I'm going to have to cut this kid in on the profit. I'm going to, as a good uncle, right? Like,
yeah.
when I saw the film rights to this,
yep,
I got to cut him in somehow. So maybe it's just like better holiday gifts, or when he has a kid, I take the kid on vacation, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And so that was the genesis of it. But it took me probably a month of just thinking about it. I'm not a big outliner, but I know before I start to write where the book's going to end.
Mm-hmm. And
I don't always necessarily know physically where it's going to end, but I sure know emotionally where it's going to end. And so I'm plotting things out as I go a little bit. I know what the big points are that I want to hit, but I don't always know how I'm going to get there. But for me, that's the fun part, because I think I'm better in the moment than I am sort of thinking about it ahead of time.
I think that's one of the biggest things I've learned from, established authors like you, is to not overthink writing and to kind of think of that,
Mm-hmm.
Beginning, middle, and end, and have an idea of where you're going, and then let the keys kind of do the talking and kind of get there in that organic way. Makes such a better manuscript, in my opinion, than it does. I mean, some people are really good at outlining, but I think I've met more people that were like, I'm way better at just kind of jotting some ideas down and getting a direction in my head and rolling with it, and then that's when the best product comes out.
Well, you know what? For me too, it's like if I type it out or something, then I feel like I've already written it, and I'm not excited to get up in the morning and drink a gallon of coffee and type all day.
Yeah,
I was like, oh, didn't I already do this? But I think the other thing too is, if I'm surprising myself, I'm surely surprising the reader. And as a writer of crime fiction, it's not, I'm not solving mysteries. I'm writing about bad people doing bad things. And so it's more how done it than who done it. Mm-hmm. And, how's this con going to work, or how's this person going to get away with something? And that requires a different kind of plot. If you're writing a standard Michael Connelly novel, dead girl shows up on the side of the road, Bosch figures out who killed her. Like, okay. There's going to be twists and turns, but that's what's going to happen. If you're writing about people perpetuating crime or doing heists or cons or whatever it might be, you're never really sure how that crew is going to shake out, or what someone's going to reveal about themselves as they go along. So I find that keeping myself a little off-center keeps the reader off-center, and that makes for a more engaging read, in my opinion. I could be wrong. I'll check Goodreads afterwards and find out.
No, I think that's a good point, because there are those almost procedural type of books where, okay, the detective is going to solve X, Y, and Z. Or the spy is going to get the bad guy, or whatever it may be, and that how they're going to do it is kind of the question, and what's going to happen along the lines is the fun part. But I think what I liked about this was that it did just that. It kind of made me continually ask, hey, what's going on? In a good way, not in a bad way, but in a way where I was like, I want to know what's going on. I want to know what's going on.
Right.
What's going to happen with the money? Is he going to get caught? Like, this is all full risky. I think it's those little questions that kind of burn deep personally, because you're like, it makes me nervous. Like, personally, a good book makes me nervous about some of the stakes, because it kind of puts me in the shoes. Like, I mean, I'd love to steal that money too, but like, I'm not going to get caught and throw away everything I've worked for.
Right.
My ducks outside would be really upset.
This is why you and I aren't criminals. But the understanding of consequence is often sort of what separates law-abiding citizens from people that don't abide the law. Yes. Well, that and drug addiction, which affects your ability to understand consequences.
Yeah.
But I think the fun thing for me is always sort of asking myself, if I were this kind of person, what would I do, and what's the wrong choice to make? I told this story recently on another interview. I've done a few in the last couple of days. I have a good friend, the writer Joe Loya, who was a bank robber. He spent, I think, 9 years in prison, 7 of which I think were in solitary. And I'd read a lot of the stuff that he'd written over the years after he got out, because after he got out, he became a very good and important writer of nonfiction about sort of the criminal experience. He's a screenwriter and stuff. But he'd written a lot about sort of the way he used to think about things. And so, like, I've used him as a source in my head for, like, creating characters, but also when I teach, talking about, like, hey, you're understand the logic of these characters. But I had quoted him a bunch, that I'd never met him, and then one day I got an email from him, and it said, "I heard you were talking about me." And I was like, "Uh-oh." Well, I didn't. And it turned out that he had read a bunch of my stuff, and he was a fan, and we just, we hit it off, and we became good friends. And the first time that I ever met him in public, I went to this Starbucks up in the Bay Area, and we were talking, and he's telling me all sorts of crazy stories. And I said to him, like, "Why do you like to read what I write? Like, you've done all the stuff that I make up." And he said, No, you and I, we think alike. And I was like, "There's no way we think alike. Like,
Yeah, no.
I'm a middle-aged frumpy Jew writing crime fiction, and you did 9. Like you did 9. You tried to kill your father when you were 15."
Golly.
And he's like, No. He's like, No. He's like, "Sometimes you're in an elevator and you think, I'd like to smash that guy's head against the wall." And I was like, "I do think that." And he said, "The difference between you and me, though, is," and I'll paraphrase him, he said, "You're a wimp." And I was like, "I am a wimp." And I've got too much to lose. He's like, "Yeah, I wasn't a wimp." He's like, "I wasn't a wimp. I did it." And I was like, "Oh." And he said to me something very important. He's like, "Never learn how to fight." And I was like, "Yeah." Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
Solid advice.
So, to answer your question in a long way.
That's a really cool story, though, and I'm impressed by that guy doing time and then coming out and writing and having a successful, writing career post being in prison, because so many people don't.
You know what? It's sort of a great story about the failures of America in some ways, in that he grew up poor and in the hood and had no mental health care. Mm-hmm. And so he was bipolar. And so they gave him drugs in prison, and he was like, "Oh, I don't want to kill everyone I meet anymore. I don't hear voices in my head telling me to do terrible things."
Yeah.
And, once he got on, lithium or whatever he was on, Prozac, who knows, it was the 80s or 90s. He's been out of prison for, 35 years or something now at this point, 30 years. And as a professional writer, but he's really lucid about who he was. And, you can feel the regret in him. He stabbed his father in the neck when he was 15 years old. So, there's just a lot of stuff that, unfortunately, he's had to deal with. But fortunately for us, he's written a lot about it. And it's really interesting stuff to read if you get the chance.
It's kind of a sad way of depicting, United States mental health, when someone has to go to jail to find like that
the drugs they need. Yeah,
and find what they need and kind of get that clarity they need. Now, I'm glad it worked for him, and I hope it works for a whole bunch of other people, but it's sad that it has to come to that, and I wish it was better.
I agree. Yeah, it's a shame, but he has a great podcast you should go listen to about bank robbing. It's as a crime writer, it's worth your time. Yeah.
Okay.
It's like 9 episodes of him, like present day, going into banks and being like, "This is how I'd heist this place." It's pretty cool.
That is cool. I like that. I like that.
It's pretty cool.
Let's talk about California a little bit because I think there's a stigma in the world that California is full of a bunch of crazy people. I've always wanted, like, my wife's getting ready to go to LA here next year sometime and go on a trip. And is California as crazy as everybody tries to make it out to be with all the looting and the crazy people running around everywhere? Is that just a bunch of baloney in the news?
I live on a golf course in Palm Springs. You think anyone's looting the house next door to me? I mean, let me look out the window right now. What I can tell you is that my neighbors across the street have pissed off my wife because they're biting her Christmas style, and they do it every year. So they might catch a beating. I'm not gonna lie. It's not gonna be from me. It's gonna be from Wendy, my wife. Bad shit happens everywhere.
Yeah.
Wherever there are people.
Yeah.
Look, you and I don't have jobs as writers unless there's bad people everywhere.
Yeah.
One of my favorite writers died this week, Daniel Drell, and I'm sure you've probably read some Daniel Drell or saw Winter's Bone. And he wrote about the Ozarks almost exclusively for the last 25 years of his career. Small towns in the Ozarks, and you probably drive through it and think, oh, that's a charming little place until you meet all the people that are selling meth and moving oxy and, trafficking sex and, bad shit happens everywhere.
Yeah.
I think the thing about California, however, is that, there's the myth of go out west and, find your dream. But that myth has changed. It used to be, a house with a picket fence or whatever. Now it's like, come to California and try to get away with it, whatever it is. Yeah. Whatever thing you want to do, whatever grift it is you want to be a part of. And I live like I said, I live in Palm Springs, which is a resort town. It's 2 hours east of Los Angeles. It's a desert. It's where Coachella is, the concert. And what you need to know about every resort town you go to is that the people here hate you.
Okay.
They want you to stay for a couple days and then please go.
Yeah. And
they are putting their fingers in your food. They are 100% spitting in your drink. They hate you. Oh. And this is true if you go on a cruise. This is true if you go to Disneyland. This is true if you go to Miami. Like, wherever you are that's a hospitality place, the people there just want to go home and watch true crime documentaries on Hulu. They don't want to spend any time with you. They want to go watch, Dead Girl Missing on Hulu or whatever. But the other side of it is there's always something a little insidious, I think, about places where people come and can be transactional about who they are. And so LA, specifically in California in particular, have always given themselves over to people who want to come here and be different than where they were somewhere else. And I think that lends itself to a certain kind of mobility, upward or downward, where people covet what their neighbor has. And they might go do a smash and grab to get it. And, I think that's true wherever there's a lot of people. But I think it's also true when people feel like whatever system they believe in has let them down. Mm-hmm. So, there's that side. But living in the desert, and then, sort of related to my book, which takes place in a beach town on the Oregon coast, there's also like what we call desert shit. And that's just shit that only happens in the desert, where you're like, oh, I just saw a guy dressed like a clown having sex in the back seat of a van. Like, that's desert shit.
We have that in Oklahoma too.
Yeah, it's like, you can go down to the Wormy Dog, right, in Stillwater and see just about anything.
Yeah, like what the heck is going on? Like,
yeah, so there's stuff that's just like, oh man, like that's some weird desert shit. Or I'll give you a good example. A good friend of mine, another noir writer, Rob Roberge, he lives actually out in the desert, this area called Wonder Valley, which is near Marine Base, 29 Palms Marine Base, but it's way out in the desert.
Yeah, I know 29 Palms.
Oh, you've been out there? Okay. And his neighbor is a drug trafficker. And so, like, he's got his own landing strip in the back of his house. This is out there in the desert. And so Rob and his wife were splitting time at the time between Wonder Valley and Chicago. And he gets a call one day from his neighbor and says, "Hey, man, yeah, some guys came in and robbed your house." And Rob's like, "Did you call the cops?" He's like, "No, man, I got warrants, so no cops. But I got the license plate for you." And Rob's like, "Well, what am I supposed to do with the license plate?" He's like, "Well, if you see him in town, we'll beat the shit out of him." And Rob's like, "Well, I'm not gonna get my dishwasher back."
Yeah, right.
It's like they had just like robbed him of all of his appliances.
Wow.
And he's like, "Yeah, well, you can't tell the cops how you found out about this ahead of time, because then you'd have to tell them about me. So you can't call the cops about this until you get home." And Rob's like, "Well, I'm not due to come back for like 2 months." He's like, "Yeah, bro, I don't know what to tell you." So it's like, that's just some desert shit.
Wow. What do you do in that case? Like, just do we go home? Do we call it in?
You just buy a new dishwasher. I think what Rob ended up doing is when he got home, he made the insurance claim or whatever. But also cops don't give a shit about someone coming in and stealing a dishwasher. I remember when I was in college, someone broke into the house I lived in with 9 guys named Chad, and they stole all of my CDs. And we called the cops, and the cop comes in and he's like taking notes about the stolen stuff. And he's like, "All right, what's stolen?" And I was like, "Well, okay, the first Jane's Addiction record, the second Jane's Addiction record, like 5 Chili Peppers CDs." And the guy's just like, "Okay." And I'm like listing off every CD I can remember having. I was like, Mother Love Bone, Nirvana, Replacements. And so he gets down to the bottom and he's like, "All right, well, I'll let you know if we recover these." I was like, "Should I be checking in with you?" He's like,
"No, don't do that."
No, you shouldn't be checking in with me. And I remember at the time I had like 4 CDs. There's this band Dramarama that I always liked. They had that song Anything Anything. And like he's about to walk out and he's like, "You got 4 Dramarama CDs?" I was like, "Yeah, like a lot of people only know him from the first record, but I was really into I'm into like a lot of their stuff. They're really like an amazing live band." And he's like,
"Okay, bud."
"Okay, kid." And so years later, I recounted this story on the internet, and the lead singer of Dramarama responded, and he's like, "Let me know if I can help with the investigation." 30 years later, whatever.
He didn't realize that it was old news.
Oh no, he knew. He just thought it was funny.
Sarcastic.
Yeah. So I think there's the cops can't solve murders. They sure as hell aren't going to find my Rick Springfield cassette or whatever. Like they're not interested. Like if I get robbed tomorrow, they're going to be like, "So you're missing 10 Jason Isbell vinyl releases?" Yeah. I'd like the blue one. So I'd like to get that one back.
Yeah.
You're like, "Okay, kid." Like, I'm 54. I'm not a kid.
Yeah. Oh man, those were good stories. Those were really good. I want to ask you about Burn Notice. What was it like for you when you got kind of the word they were going to do a TV adaptation of it? And then how did it feel when it ran that many seasons? And what was it kind of like seeing your baby turn into a prime TV thing?
Well, if it had been the case that was true, it would have been great. But in fact, I wrote the books after the first season.
Really?
So Matt Nix created the show.
Okay.
And Matt was an old friend of mine. And they wanted to turn the show into a series of novels, which they'd done very successfully with Monk, where my brother actually had been a writer on Monk and then wrote 15 novels based on the show. And so they wanted to do the same thing with Burn Notice. And Matt said, "I want Todd to do it," because we were old friends. And so we sat down after the first season and I was like, "Dude, I've never I've never done this before. And he's like, you're talented. You're a novelist. Like, you can do it.
This is backwards.
And I was really, this is the point at which I was really sort of making the pivot into like sort of standard crime fiction. I'd always kind of written like literary crime or suspense, but I wasn't trying to be funny. You know, everything was so sad, and people would read the books and they want to kill themselves after reading it. And I didn't want to keep writing books where I'd lose my audience from death at the conclusion of every book. And so this opportunity to adapt the show into a series of standalone novels, so they aren't based on anything that happens on the show. There's just fresh new adventures of the characters, was really like getting called up from AAA and being told like, hey, you know what? We know you've not played in the majors before, but we need you to hit 280. We need to drive in 75 runs, steal about 15 bases. If you got power, great, but it's not required. We just need you to get on base.
Yeah.
Sort of Moneyball, sort of an A's sort of point of view. Because I knew that these books were going to be consumed by a lot of people. And they were really big selling books. And that changed the course of my career because I found myself writing immediately for a big audience versus hoping that I cultivated a big audience through, whatever marketing or the stuff of the book. But those books came out and Bird Nose fans are going to buy them. And so that was a shock to my system. Because now suddenly I've got 50,000, 100,000 people reading these books. And I was like, oh, like I wasn't expecting that. And it was really instrumental in me refining the voice that I would then use to write the next 30 years or so of my books, I'm sure. I mean, I wrote the last one in 2010. So it's been 15 years since I wrote one of those books. But the voice I used in those books is really what became the voice I used for the GANGSTERLAND books, and to a lesser extent, Only Way Out. But it showed me really how to marry sort of the propulsive plot of a thriller and a kind of black comedy that I like to write, which was a hallmark of the show. So it was really cool. And, the great thing about Matt was he let me be in the writer's room before every season started, and we'd sit there and I'd listen to them break the stories for the season. And that helped me understand the logic of the show in a way that's different than just writing it. Like, why is Matt making this decision? Why is this episode, 306 being written like this, but 305 was written like that? And that changed the way I understood sort of how to write commercial fiction in a big way. But more importantly, it allowed me to understand the importance of meeting the expectations of a large audience. And that wasn't something I'd ever really thought about before. I write first, I think, for my own mental health and personal joy. But what I, of course, know is that the most important thing is that, I'm writing for that person who comes home from their crappy day and they sit in an overstuffed chair and they pour themselves a drink and they just want to disappear for 2 hours into a world not their own. And how do I do that? How do I give them that little piece of joy? And so that was fun. That really taught me that. And I really owe a huge debt to Matt for letting me see how he did that and how his writers team, all of whom have ended up running, half the shows in Hollywood.
Did you ever feel kind of, I don't want to say limited, but when you're given kind of a set of characters and said, okay, hey, go do this, did you ever feel like a little limited or kind of in a box, so to speak? Because you're given rules from the get-go.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't kill one of the main characters. I can't cut off his finger, unless I have the access to Jedi medicine. I can't cut off a hand and then reattach it before the next movie. So of course, and so I wrote 5 of the books, and I could have written those books forever in perpetuity. They offered that to me, but I was ready to do something else after writing 5 of them. And I wrote 5 in a very short period of time. I wrote 5 books in 3 years.
Wow.
Which is a lot. But, I wrote them very quickly, and I sort of wrote them like screenplays in a way. So the voice was pretty lean, dialogue heavy, very episodic, we're hitting beats. So it's a sort of different style of writing than I might I might do in another kind of novel. But yeah, when you're writing someone else's character specifically, yeah, you're going to feel a little bit in a box. But the other side is, if you want to work in Hollywood at all, and today's a good day. I'll give you a breaking news story in just a second. You're writing in a showrunner's point of view. Your job is to write scenes based on the television show that those people are making. So today, for instance, it was announced that a show being executive produced by a hot young filmmaker named Martin Scorsese and Brian Koppelman and David Levine, who made Rounders and, of course, 8 seasons of Billions, have a new show that has been greenlit by Netflix that takes place in Las Vegas, the casino in Las Vegas, and I am on the show. So I'm one of the people working on the show, one of the producers.
Congrats.
And so, which has been awesome. It's a secret that I've been holding for some months now. But being in that world and knowing, like, the ideas that I have to also match the vision of the showrunners. It's not my show. Like, I'm there to row the boat. Mm-hmm. And learning that through writing those Burn Notice books was very, very helpful.
Okay. What's it like working as a writer today, where you're dipped into Hollywood, as opposed to a writer when you first started in writing?
Money.
It's a lot more of that today.
There's more of that, yeah. So that's good. There's the aforementioned cookies that just sort of roll into the house.
Huge perk.
You know what? I'll tell you the biggest difference. It has nothing to do with the writing itself. It has all to do with my mental health, to be perfectly honest. When I was young, I thought I deserved things. Mm-hmm. I deserve to sell this book. I deserve to get this great review. I deserve this. I deserve that. And if I didn't get that thing that I thought I deserved, pissed me off. Like, why did that person get that and I didn't get that? Now, to put this in context, my first book came out, I was 29 years old, which is young to have a first book come out. And it really wasn't until, after like my second book, it was after my second book, I wrote a book I couldn't sell. And, sometimes, like Mike Tyson once said, everybody's got a plan until they get hit in the face.
Yep.
Like, oh, I took one. Like, I swallowed that one. And, I got hit in the face for a year because everyone telling me that read the book as I was writing it, like, this book sucks. Ugh. You are wasting your time. What are you doing? And then I was so full of hubris because I was 32 at that point or something. I was like, you don't know. My last book won and lost a bunch of awards. You're not writing these books. My name goes on the cover, not yours.
Yeah.
That didn't serve me particularly well. As a man, as a writer, in business, interpersonally, in phone calls with my agent, in conversations at the dinner table with my wife.
Yeah,
like, no one wants that. Like, no one wants to hear me talk like that shit. Like that, like, stupid. And, I realized that part of where this was coming from at a young age was like, I just wanted to be successful. I just wanted to be successful. And I was young and angry and, mad at my parents and all that shit. Mm-hmm. I wasn't yet on Lipitor. So, like, I still had a metabolism and it would shift wildly. And so, like, having that thing happen where I couldn't sell that book, it really made me sort of reevaluate, like, why am I doing this? Like, what am I doing? Number one, why am I doing this? What do I want out of this life? Mm-hmm. And to view what we do not as a competition or a race, but something I do because I'm called to it. All I've ever wanted to do professionally is play first base for the Oakland A's, play quarterback for the Raiders, which frankly I could do.
I mean, you might be able to play for the A's too.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point. I don't want to live in Sacramento. But look, I'm already, like, I could take a hit as often as Geno Smith and not complete a pass on the outside to Brock Bowers. I could do that.
Me too.
So if he could do that, I could do that. Yeah. I could hand the ball off to Ashton Genty and have him run into a brick wall of humanity. I could have him do that. So there's those two things, and I wanted to write. Those are the three things I always wanted to do. And when I started thinking about this and approaching it from a position of joy and love for what I was doing, the success soon followed. It was not torture to sit down to write. It was a joy to write. I had to peel myself out of this office to go have a life, to go have normal existence. So that was the biggest difference. Like so many, so I'm a professor of creative writing, and I founded an MFA program at UC Riverside. And so many of my students, are tortured by sitting down to work. I'm like, you are doing all of this by choice. If it's torture, go to law school. Become an accountant.
Yeah.
Be a really well-read barista. You don't have to do this. You don't have to put yourself through the fucking ringer, And once I realized that sort of same thing, like, hey man, like I am making all my dreams come true. It changed the way I approach writing. But that's not saying I'm not fallible. Like this was a couple years ago. This is before the pandemic. I was outside my backyard, which is behind us somewhere, and some perceived injustice had occurred to me. I don't even remember what it was. Someone probably said something mean to me on Twitter or something. I have no idea what it was. And I was like wandering around in my backyard, and my wife came out, and she's like, what's going on? And it's like, oh, perceived injustice, perceived injustice, perceived injustice, perceived injustice. She's like, okay. And she's like, so let me ask you a question. She's like, have you achieved every dream you've ever had? And I said, yes. She said, when was the last time you got a bad review for one of your books? And I was like, 20 years ago. She's like, did you start an MFA program at the University of California, a university you could not have been accepted into, that you run based on your own philosophy for creative writing? Yes. Do you have a good living? Yes. Are you happy? Yes. Are you in love? Yes. Do you have health insurance? Yes. Like she goes through all the things. And she was like, what's enough? What's enough? And I was like, well, that's number one. I should probably make an appointment to talk to a professional about this. So that will be important. And number two, it's like, yeah, like having professional desires shouldn't have to make you crazy. Like I've achieved everything I've ever wanted to achieve. I've done all the things I wanted to do, and now I get to just keep doing it. And they're going to pay me for it and send me cookies. Like, why would I ever be upset about this stuff outside of something brief and non-binding? So that really changed the way I think about it. But all that being said, and this is a long answer to a short question, you have to think about this as the publishing business, not the publishing gallery. You can be sad in a gallery. It's hard to be sad at work. Like, you got to be productive.
What would you tell, the last big question before I let you go, what would you tell aspiring authors today about the industry, and how have you kind of seen it change from when you started off?
So there's a couple important things. Number one, get a good chair. Like a good chair is going to save you some problems. Like I'm sitting in right now. This is a lazy boy office chair. Dude, wow. I could sleep in this. Really? Yeah, I can sleep in it. Yeah. It's super comfortable. Like if I close my eyes right now, I'd be asleep in 5 minutes. So that's number one.
Okay.
Number two, get an ergonomic keyboard. It's going to save your wrists. It's also important. The thing about the book industry that has changed so profoundly is the nature of how we actually sell books and how people find out about books. The democratization of literary criticism has given equal value to Suzanne Cat Lover 6969 on Goodreads as it does to the New York Times. In fact, Cat Lover 6969 is probably getting more eyes on her work, on her opinions, than a columnist at the New York Times is. And that's changed the way we consume art, I think, in a specific way. No 19-year-old's picking up the New York Times book review on a Sunday and reading that. when I was 19, I did. It didn't make me cool. I assure you. Other things made me cool. That did not.
Not that.
Like living in a fraternity house and being like, "Hey, did anyone get the New York Times today?" And they're like, "Nah, bro, we didn't.
Hey,
we didn't get that." I was
and
like,
don't ask us again.
Yeah, I was like, "Oh, if I pick one up, does anyone want the living section?" They're like, "Nah, bro. Like, no,
We're good."
no." Yeah, it's like, okay, well, I'll be back. And I was president of the fraternity, no less. But anyway, so like the democratization of criticism and how people consume information about books is so completely different today than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It's changing constantly. And so, that's an important thing to think about. Is like a writer coming up today isn't going to care about whether or not they get reviewed in the New York Times or the Washington Post or the LA Times or any of those places. They want someone with 1 million followers on Instagram to be rubbing their book on them in Ibiza or whatever. And also, look, I'm not immune to that. If you're in Ibiza right now and you have my book,
call me.
Like, get to rubbing. You know what I'm saying? So, there's that side of it. Genre fiction, thankfully for both you and me, outsells literary fiction massively. And there's still sort of in the academic world, a ghettoization of genre fiction, which is silly. And it's only going to last until those people finally retire and people of our age come in that, grew up reading crime and sci-fi and fantasy, and they're running, creative writing programs and things like that. The proliferation of genre fiction, I think, is so cool because great writers are using what used to be, literary skills to write To Kill a Mockingbird or something or whatever, or, like Margaret Atwood type books that she wrote earlier in her career, and applying them to speculative fiction or literary fiction or thriller fiction or noir or whatever it might be. And you see that raise up the quality of genre fiction significantly. And then you also see the transition between the popularity of those books into also the popularity of other properties. And I think of Game of Thrones in this regard.
Yeah.
David Benioff, who adapted Game of Thrones, he was a literary writer. He wrote 25th Hour and City of Thieves, and then he started doing almost solely TV and film. But he came from a literary background with a little bit of a crime bent, and then he takes over Game of Thrones, the greatest sort of fantasy novel of our time, and he imbues it with the sort of depth that literary fiction often had, and then also a lot of incest, which is also a hallmark of John Irving novels. So there's that. So I think the proliferation of genre fiction is a huge change, and you can't discount the rise and ubiquity of ebooks. My new book is published by Thomas and Mercer, which is the publishing arm of Amazon, and I'm seeing firsthand how they can reach readers.
Yeah.
It's an entirely different business model that they have, but they know the algorithm. Mm-hmm. They know how to get my book in front of a person that will buy it. And that's a huge difference than what Random House or Simon & Schuster is doing, because they're still hoping for an organic viral experience based on marketing or whatever. They're not delivering that book into your email box because they know you're buying it. Because Amazon knows if you, and this is of course the scary part too, Amazon knows if you were up in Oregon recently and bought a guidebook to shitty resort towns, they're going to push that book theoretically through their algorithm. They're going to know. And, that's next level book selling that just did not exist before. Whether it's good or bad for the world, I'm not sure of. It's been good for this book for sure. But I really miss the experience of just sitting in a bookstore for 3 hours and, drinking coffee and spilling it on something and then hiding and then reading some more books and doing that. Do you want to hear a crazy thing that I just learned about? Maybe you know about this. There was a study that was done in the 1990s, I think in Japan, of a woman wanted to find out why people, when they go into bookstores, often have to go to the bathroom.
That was a study.
And I was like, this is a study? But also I was like, also true. I do often when I'm in a bookstore feel like I need to go to the bathroom. And what it is that people, their nervous system in a bookstore if you're a big book buyer, it smells like your house. And being around the books calms you down. And all of a sudden, your body's like, oh, well, I could go to the bathroom. There's not a saber-toothed tiger in here. We're at home. This was a study.
Okay. It sounds bizarre, but I've seen, like, what was it? I think Rand Paul does like a thing every year where he releases like some of the outrageous things your government has spent money on, and there's outrageous studies like that. But it's like over like in Argentina or some country that I'm like, that's a country? We spent $4 million on it, and you're like, what are we doing? That sounds like one of those.
I was. Yeah, I'm sure it was, but it was in Japan. I was like I read like an abstract of it, and it was like, well, this makes an awful lot of sense. And then I was like, well, boy, if I got to be somewhere, I should not ever go into a bookstore first, I suppose, or maybe I should. I'm not sure what the answer is. Yeah. What am I supposed to do in this situation?
That is a weird study, but also like it makes sense. But like I feel like we could have sat down and figured that out.
Yeah, like I don't know if sending waves of control groups into a Barnes and Noble in Japan was a good use of whoever's money it was.
Yeah,
but dude, here's what I want you to do. I want you to get like 10 buddies, and I want you to go to Tulsa or Stillwater or something, place where there's some nice independent bookstores, and just send waves of your friends in and see how many of them have to go to the bathroom, and then you're like, oh, I knew you didn't read my books. You didn't have to go to the bathroom. You don't read. I knew you had read my books because you had to go to the bathroom. You're a reader,
right?
Like it's like a lie detector test now that you can use on your friends.
Todd, this has been a pleasure. I'm gonna let you go. But where can people go to find more about you, follow along, and get the books?
You can go to any sort of social media. I'm on all of them. My vanity won't allow me to. I'm not on TikTok because I'm not a 17-year-old girl, and I'm no longer on OnlyFans because it got getting stalkers. It got weird, as you know, from your own account. But all the other places, Threads, Instagram, Blue Sky, Facebook, all that stuff. If you just type in my name, you'll find me. And then also todgoldberg.com, and you can buy my books anywhere books are sold. Find airports around all of California and America. And look, if you come to California, don't act up.
Yeah, behave.
Now you know.
Yeah.